Okay, let's get started, shall we? And let's see, I think I already assigned to you the material for this week, Bacon and Hobbes in the reading, and an outlining of Hobbes. This afternoon, I want us to focus on Bacon, and if we have time, some introductory things regarding Hobbes. But to introduce this, let me start with a reminder of what we were saying last time. That is to say that the history of modern philosophy can be schematized in terms of the intersection of two lines of thought. On the one hand, in British philosophy, an empiricist tradition, and on the other hand, in continental, a rationalist tradition. These two traditions representing the extension into all areas of inquiry of the inductive methods of science that were being proposed, and on the other hand, the deductive mathematical type of method which Descartes is going to propose. So what we'll be doing is tracing the development of these two strains, and starting in the British strain with Francis Bacon and Thomas Hobbes, 17th century England. Francis Bacon, first of all, some orientation to his purpose and method. His overall purpose is very apparent in his writings and in much of the secondary literature about Bacon, but it frequently does not come out in the one-chapter treatments that you get in textbooks like Stumpf. It is, however, particularly interesting if we're trying to trace the shift of worldviews from medieval to modern times. Inasmuch as Bacon, while every bit as genuinely Christian as the medievals, comes at the whole undertaking in a markedly different way. Bacon's mother was a Puritan of Reformed theological persuasion. And there are echoes of that in Bacon's thinking and in his overall purpose. He makes repeated reference to the so-called cultural mandate in the opening chapters of Genesis. The mandate given to Adam and Eve to replenish, subdue, exercise dominion, stewardship, so forth. And he complains that the human race, far from fulfilling that mandate, is detracted from it, and that it is the responsibility that we have to recover the exercise of that right over nature which belongs to the human race by divine bequest. So he's thinking, as Reformed thinkers often do, of the task of philosophy, science, the intellect, in terms of creation, sin, redemption. Creation gave us a mandate. Sin has distracted us from the mandate. Redemption calls us back. Now, that's the theological frame with which he's working. But the particular kind of sins that he blames and the particular redemptive hope that he has is tied very much to philosophy. That is to say, he regards the scholastics as some of the main perpetrators of the crime of distracting the human race from the cultural mandate. For the reason that the scholastic disputes help us not at all in enriching human life, in transforming society through human knowledge, and so forth. And on the contrary, what he wants, instead of the sterility of Aristotelian philosophy, as he calls it, the sterility that disgusts him, what he wants is a new approach, a new method that will help us get back to the task of transforming nature and shaping human society. Put it this way, if you like. The medievals conceived of philosophy as ancilla theologiae. That is to say, as the servant, ancillary to, servant of theology. Philosophy serving theological tasks. What Bacon does is to see philosophy not as the ancilla, the servant of theology, but of society, working for the good of the human condition, you'll see, trying to change the world in which we live. And he's very explicit that the ideal that he has is a kind of utopian ideal. Indeed, the late 16th century, the Elizabethan age, was the age of utopias. You see, it was the age of utopias. And Bacon himself wrote about a scientific utopia that he was dreaming of. A utopia, that is to say, that is brought in by applying scientific knowledge, knowledge of nature's processes, to the transformation of conditions. And it is that transformed society for which he sees everyone working, which he speaks of as the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God. So it's sort of a religiously motivated utopian ideal, characteristic of the Renaissance, but one that sees the hope implemented by modern science, you see, by modern science. Now, let's not jump to the conclusion that he's thinking that human knowledge automatically produces good results. He makes some ethical comments along the way, and it's very evident that while, as he puts it, knowledge is power, and that's his famous dictum, knowledge is power, he wants that power controlled by an appropriate ethic. And without the natural law ethic rooted in the scholastic tradition, you see, he doesn't have a metaphysical basis for an ethic. And so the ethic has to be one that comes from, in his words, true religion and right reason, which sounds just like William of Ockham. True religion, the divine commands. Right reason, the prudence that comes out of being aware of consequences. True religion and right reason. Now, if you have with you the anthology, and I'd like to assume you do, this is the new anthology, beginning with Bacon. Oh, you mean you didn't bring it? Okay, next time. Okay, some of you, I see, brave souls, have used copies with you, and others have new copies with you. Bring it anyway, we're going to need it, the whole thing. On page 20, oops, I brought the wrong one. The old one. Let me borrow, may I, Janelle? Borrow yours. I spoke in a mirror. All right. At the very end of the Bacon selection, the very end on page 20, this is what he says. It will not be amiss to distinguish three kinds, as it were, grades of ambition in mankind. The first is of those who desire to extend their own power in their native country. Now that's the self-interested kind. Which kind is vulgar and degenerate? So he's no ethical egoist. The second is of those who labour to extend the power of their country and its dominion among men. Now, this certainly has more dignity, though no less covetousness. It's corporate egoism. Interesting for a writer in the age of Elizabeth, if you know English history, you see. But if a man endeavour to establish and extend the power and dominion of the human race itself over the universe, his ambition, if ambition it may be called, is without doubt both more wholesome thing and more noble than the other two. And that power of the human race over the universe, that's the dominion over the creation, you see. So that is Bacon's motive. And you may well have come across literature or heard it said that this Baconian emphasis really gave license to modern science to exploit nature, to dominate resources and the environment for our own pleasure and good, so that sometimes the environmental problems of our day are blamed on Francis Bacon, you see. Now, frankly, I think that's accusing Bacon without looking at the context from which he's thinking. Because it's very apparent as you read Bacon at length that he's not thinking of it as domination, but as stewardship in a way appropriate to the kingdom of God. So it's a very significantly different thing. That's not to say that the Baconian influence didn't give people license, but it wasn't Bacon. It was the way Bacon was read out of context. Now, what sort of method does he have in mind? What sort of knowledge can give power over nature's processes? And the answer obviously has to be a knowledge of nature's processes. A knowledge of nature's processes. And the way he puts it might